anything else.
We don't want to know.
We're dedicated, yes.
To our favorite shows.
Oh, my circuits.
Everybody loves Hypnotoad.
Scary Dog.
Pearson at Blurnsville.
Futurama.
Good evening. You are listening to a Radulich Broadcasting premiere podcast TV party tonight. I'm your host, the mandated reporter, and frankly, I'm mortified, Mr. Mark Radulich. And tonight, our favorite show is Disenchantment, Part 3, brought to you by the good people at Netflix, among others. Part 3, or the first part of Season 2, whichever you like, dropped on January 15th, 2021, and we're going to continue our conversation of this show tonight. I am joined once again by the 411 Mania MMA coverage god and your very own coverage host of SmackDown on Friday nights for 411mania.com, single-handedly reducing the amount of people that want to come to 411 for wrestling reading. Ladies and gentlemen, Robert Winfree. How do you do, sir?
Every single word of what you just said was true. I just want that on the record.
At this point, it's become a challenge, right? Let's see if I can completely reduce the rate at which people come to the website.
I'm kind of half hoping I can slowly kill it off over the next 3 to 5 years.
Just make Ashish completely regret asking you to do SmackDown.
Yeah. Look, let me put it this way. If any one individual is ever in a position to bring down something, there's so many other flaws going on at that particular point in time that that I would not be at fault necessarily. And to be abundantly clear, lest anyone from 411 hear this, most of this is a joke. I deeply appreciate the opportunities you've all given me. I like working for you all. Run with the gag, please.
Okay. And speaking of gags, ladies and gentlemen, back to cover yet another episode, another season of Disenchantment. Another day, another cartoon, another David Wright. David, how do you do, sir?
I'm doing good, thanks, Mark. I'm here to make sure that our numbers coming here for movies and TV coverage are also diminishing. Jesse, it's all up to you to save this thing.
Yeah, with his crazy side projects that he's got going on. Hey, Jesse, can you want to take back your show? No, I'm essential. I'm too busy. 5 podcasts later. Where the fuck did all these come from?
To be fair, 4 of those were re-uploads of old stuff.
to be fair. Sure. And one of them was a television show that only lasted 4 episodes, apparently. Whatever hell of a boss is. In any case, we miss you, Jesse. Come back soon. All right, so Robert, you and I talked before the show, and I said, listen, your memory for detail is better than mine, so link us from Part 2 to Part 3. Go.
Well, Part 2 of Disenchantment ended on something of a cliffhanger, much like the first one did. King Zog had been shot accidentally by Bean. I thought this character's name would come to me, but it has not, so now I'm going to have to look it up. But her half-brother...
Derek,
thank you. Has been promoted to king. He is something of a puppet king under the watchful eye, 3 eyes, of... I'm blanking on... Oddval, that's it. Of Oddval, the Archdruid, of Oddval, who is a different character than the Archdruidess, and whatever nefarious Illuminati analog they are running. Bean, Elfo, and Lucy are all sentenced to be burned at the stake as witches and usurpers and etc., etc.
Demons.
Well, Lucy is in fact a demon.
Yeah.
They
got 1 out of 3 right. Just pointing that out.
That's true. They are saved from immolation via the troglodytes who live under the castle, and Bean's mother, who we all thought exploded, who is kind of taken over their society. And Zog is convalescing from his bullet wound. The machinations of Steamland continue, the science-based sort of rival kingdom. Our three intrepid heroes are stuck underground with the troglodytes, and Derek is now a puppet king dangling by the strings of a nefarious secret society.
Yes, that are trying to use him to promote their theocracy.
Yeah. Well, sort of. It's never actually clear what they're trying to do.
Well,
Get as much stuff as possible.
Well, I mean, I think Oddval and whoever the three-eyed woman is, I can't remember.
Archdruidess.
Yeah,
I think she actually has a
the
name.
Archdruidess.
they were absolutely pushing a religious agenda. And they were pushing Derek for more to enact more conservative laws, and then he kind of just goes in the opposite direction, and he's like, I'm going to do whatever now. You know, he turns into...
He decides to do whatever. He says, now I will establish a socialist utopia, and everyone freaks out like, no, this is a bad idea, because it is.
It's kind of an oxymoron.
Yeah.
He kind of does the Patton Oswalt imitation of what if the mentally disabled kids ran student council. He's like, we're going to have a pizza party. Shouldn't we study? Pizza! All right. That sort of thing.
What do you mean, what if?
Fair play.
Well done, Dave.
I have been watching a lot of Community lately. Thanks, Mark.
You're welcome. Glad I could help. All right, guys, let's start. Let me first say about this season. It felt very much like, not necessarily a reset to the first season, but it very much felt like a departure from where the show had been going, because the first season started off very compartmentalized. It was every episode, Bean was going on a different adventure and doing a different thing with Lucy and Elfo. And then by the time we got to the second season, it was much more chapters in a book. And then I feel like they kind of reverted back to first season structure, where, at least for the bulk of it, it felt like there wasn't kind of a central arc propelling her forward. It was more compartmentalized, and we were back to Bean, Elfo, and Lucy having adventures until the very end when she becomes queen, and then it takes more of a direction. But I wanted to see what you guys thought of that. What did you think of Season 3 in terms of structural narrative compared to the previous two seasons, Robert?
Do we want to go over the plot for Season 3 or before we get into this, or do we want to just kind of...
Just go. Just answer my question.
Okay. I actually do kind of think that you're right that there's parts of this season that get a little bit back to the three people having adventures, but I feel like this one does have a bit more in this, more in the vein of part 2. It does have a little bit of a narrative thrust to it throughout. Their adventures all seem to have kind of a little bit of a goal. I mean, the first couple of episodes, they're trying to escape the underground. Then there's
the mystery of who shot Zog and with what, and they're trying to figure out what the...
then they go to Steamland.
Yeah. Follow the Archdruidess to Steamland, then escape Steamland, then get back to Dreamland, then deal with Zog's insanity, then Bean's the queen and having to...
Then the ogres show up.
Yeah, having to protect the kingdom from the inevitable Steamland invasion, and then the ogres show up.
Yeah, so that's kind of what we have going on, and it all does kind of... The majority of it kind of runs together. Again, we do have some episodes, some of the stuff in Steamland, they separate and they all kind of do their own thing to varying degrees of success and hilarity. But it does kind of feel like, again, we're kind of pushing enough things towards ahead. You know, we have what the elves are up to. We have Levo finding the king and saying that what he has found under Dreamland Castle is, the ancient seat of power for the elves.
The very thing.
The very thing.
Every time he says that, I laugh.
It is funny. We get one of my favorite gags. It was actually in the trailer, and it was still funny when they showed it in... It was funny in the trailer, and it's funnier in context when King Zog is running screaming through the city, and then he runs into, Shaco. They just have that conversation of...
I'll talk to you later.
Yeah, well, that was great.
Haven't they done that gag before?
I don't think so in that same way. I mean... The basic premise of two people having a full conversation in something like that is a fairly old gag. So I'm sure
okay.
you've seen it before.
Dave, you be the tiebreaker on this. I feel like that's an ongoing gag between Zog and Shaco. Or am I imagining that?
I don't remember it. Most of the Shaco gags seem to involve him seeing someone in a compromised position and going "woo," and that's just kind of it. But yeah, I get the gag of they're just basically speaking in nonsense, but they treat it like it's an actual conversation.
All right, now we can kind of take this kind of, I think, block by block, because you're right. It starts off with just them dealing with the Trog underground tunnels, and then that blends into trying to figure out how and why Zog got shot, and then that bleeds into Adventures in Steamland, which, okay, when we get there, that middle part, I gotta talk about, just because like it took a weird left turn for me. And then coming out of Steamland, we sort of have the resolution of this part of the season with Zog descending into madness and Bean ascending into a position of queenhood. And then the subsequent fallout from that. So, Robert, this first bit here where Bean's mother shows up, I don't know. She's a funny character, and the reveal that she's eating Trog's brains, I was like, oh, okay. It just feels like, I don't know how much of this was planned ahead of time, but this felt like they feel like they had something with the character, and they didn't just want to do away with her, so they've invented a new reason for her to be around. And then at the end of the season, it's kind of the same thing with her, where she just fucking turns up out of nowhere for no good reason. And it just feels like the writers are trying to find stuff for that character to do. It doesn't come across to me. I mean, it's funny and entertaining, but in terms of character strength and plot strength, I don't know how strong it is. It doesn't feel strong to me. What do you think?
I almost kind of think they do have... I think the problem that they're running into, and again, I'm speculating wildly here, they have kind of an endpoint for the character. They know what they want her to do in the grand scheme of things. Mm-hmm. They don't have a lot of stuff in between sorted out.
Yeah.
Which again it's still a problem. It's just a different problem.
Sure.
Yeah, I mean, her eating the Trog brains, I was kind of wondering what was up with that. There's a couple of funny gags that come out of this. When Bean dresses up as her and can't walk in the boots.
Yeah, then they do the old card of, I'm not Dagmar, she's Dagmar. Shoot her, shoot me, shoot her.
That's exactly what you would say. My favorite was when the Trog was like, "Oh, I have to go and feed Queen Dagmar tonight." It's like, "Oh, don't worry, you won't remember it."
Yeah.
And boy, did that pay off in the end.
I chuckled at that one. There was also the gag where Elfo has to give her a massage. And yeah, I kind of laughed. When he gets up and does the slip and slide thing from her shoulders down to up, down through the swell of her lower back up to her hips, and then back and forth, and he gets way into it, and she's like, "Enough, get off, get off of me."
Thanks, Elfo. I needed that.
Yeah. Eventually, the other thing from this particular subset is, again, Zog has been shot. He's recovering because Bean actually removed the bullet from his chest at the end of part 2. Never mind how much medical training and expertise that actually takes.
Really?
Yes, really. Shut up. Let me have my jokes. So he is, again, sort of recovering, but he's discovered the plot against him, and he's trying to figure out some way out of this, to outmaneuver this group of people.
Very poorly, I might add.
Well, sure. None of these people are actually good at their jobs. Except for Lucy as a bartender. So he gets one of the guards, Pendergast, to help him escape from the castle. Unfortunately, this plot is discovered by, again, the ancient group of the Third Eye or whatever. So, and the Archdruidess in particular kills Zog's plan is to fake his death, get into a coffin, and be transported out of the city like that, and then be freed once he leaves the castle.
What could go wrong?
Indeed. Turns out what could go wrong was the Archdruidess figuring out what was going on, killing Pendergast, and then burying Zog alive in his coffin.
Yeah, I mean, he could have like a worse plan, like, I don't know, getting out onto the balcony for all of the kingdom to see, saying, hey guys, look, I'm the king, I'm still alive. By the way, Oddval and the Archdruidess tried to kill me, arrest them and off with their heads. But, you know, I guess that wouldn't have worked.
I genuinely wonder how many... I mean, given Zog's reputation, there's a very open question about whether or not the people would have just looked up at him, thought about it, and gone, meh.
Yeah, though this, I'm just going to stuff this in here because I'm thinking about it, is that Zog kind of changed a bit this season, and I'm not talking about the insanity. Just in the first season, he seemed to be a lot more like the warrior who became king and has no idea what to do with being king. You know, like, I solve all my problems by hitting them with an axe, and now I have to go to fancy dinners and, you know, wear pants. Whereas now it's like, apparently he's like the latest in a long line of kings and prophecies and whatnot get involved in that. So, bit of a retcon there, I thought.
I'm actually okay with that because of what they play it off as he was like the younger brother. So he was just kind of the carefree warrior, whereas Yogg, his older brother, was the one who was supposed to be king. And then after Yogg dies, Zog is bumped up and he has to go from, again, kind of warrior who just, you know, loves life, loves fighting.
It's like the Crown. You know, the first king abdicated his throne, and then the younger brother had to take over, and then he died. And then
I guess I didn't connect the dots there. So I wonder, like, will the next king be like Og? Like, are they going to go just like double letters?
I think the thought process is that whatever curse has fallen over Dreamland, it will die once Zog dies, because he is the last of the alphabeted Oggs. That's all part of the secret book of Dreamland Kings that Derek finds under his bed. Because there's Og, Bog, Cog, Dog. You know where that's going. Just all the way down, and Zog being the last one.
Right.
So I think that's kind of the thought process there, but he is saved from actual suffocation to death in his shallow grave after some of the troglodytes dig up under the pauper's grave that he has been committed to. But he's been suffering from not only severe oxygen deprivation, but just the stress and
the
confinement.
Trauma of being buried alive.
Yeah, and if professional wrestling has taught me anything, that's not a thing.
I was thinking more The Bride and Kill Bill, but sure, we can go either way.
Well, one of those is to be taken seriously, the other is very much not.
It is up for debate which one is which.
That's true. We can leave that up to the listener can decide which of those is a more serious medium. He runs wild through the troglodyte area. He finds Bean and Lucy and everything. He thinks he's in hell. He believes he has died and now found himself in hell. They escape from the troglodyte caves with the help of a somewhat skanky troglodyte that Elfo's been seeing.
Yeah, can we talk about that for a second?
Because Elfo just attracts them.
Is it just me, or did this season up the amount of sexual jokes than in the previous two seasons? I feel like there were. I know it's an adult cartoon, and it has been an adult cartoon from the inception, but it felt like the jokes are always more of the drinking and drugging variety. And this season was just we haven't done a lot of sex jokes. Or or am I just remembering wrong?
They've been present in the first two parts. I do agree with you that they kind of emphasize them a little bit more this time around. But they've certainly been the first couple of episodes, when Elfo is dating what is it, Kissy?
Yeah.
Kisso, something like that.
Yeah, Kissy.
Yeah, when he's dating her, there's plenty of jokes.
Okay.
I agree with you that they are emphasized a little bit more this season. That's certainly true. Anyway, so they escape. Derek, who has, again, tried to be a good king now, as close to a good king as an idiot can be. There's a reason Ralph Wiggum is not in charge of anything. They he welcomes back Bean and Zog and everybody. He pardons everyone. Zog becomes king again, but now he's a little bit crazy.
Honk. Sorry, Ono's reaction to him honking later on in the episode in the season is fucking stoked. She's like, no, it's like, Zaki, I love you, but I cannot deal with the honking.
Yeah. So that's where we get to for a little bit. There's an entire because the next thing that happens, Derek gets locked out of the castle because no one likes him. He tries to become a man. He tries to get married. The Archdruidess tries to kill some people at the wedding ceremony. She escapes on a Steamland motorcycle. Bean and Elfo go after him, and she leaves Lucy to watch over Zog. Which
What could go wrong?
Well, I mean, they do actually find a talking cat.
And then Lucy gets jealous.
Yes, he does. So that kind of leads to them getting to Steamland, then the introduction of Alva. So we've talked a little bit about that first, couple of episodes. So the Steamland stuff. I mean, I'm trying to figure out what that would probably be. What numbers 4, 5, and 6?
Yeah. So I wanted to spend some time on this because the whole thing with her going to Steamland was the Archdruidess, I believe, reveals that she has a gun. And she got the gun from Steamland. And it is revealed that her and Oddval were the ones that set up this whole plot. And she's kind of left holding the bag. And so she has a motorcycle from Steamland in hiding. And she takes it and she goes off back to Steamland. And Bean and Elfo are in pursuit. And when they get there, the whole thing is, well, we got to find the Archdruidess and make her pay for what she did to Zog. And somewhere in the Steamland episodes, things took this weird turn where Elfo ended up at like a hunter society meeting and then got sold into circus slavery.
That was funny.
Bean runs afoul of somebody who starts off being nice to her, but is only nice to her because he wants the Dreamland magic, which he thinks she possesses. What the hell was going on with these episodes? This made no sense to me.
Okay, I actually enjoyed a lot of this for a variety of different reasons. The stuff with Bean and Alva, he's the guy in charge of the big mono corporation that runs and owns everything in Steamland. Yeah, he thinks that she has magic, which it turns out she does, even though she can't control it yet. And he actually has a really nice line. You've got something going on over there that we don't know about, and we'd like it. Magic is just a natural phenomenon we haven't adequately explained or understood yet. And I think a meeting of our two kingdoms would be mutually beneficial. And he presents it in this very reasonable way.
The only indication we have that he might be up to no good is when Bean does confront the Archdruidess, who we find out is working in conjunction with Alva, who says he had no idea she did what she did. Like, they fight, and the Druidess wrestles Bean to the ground and whispers in her ear, I know you don't trust me, but don't trust him, before he has her carted away. But otherwise, he seems to be a perfectly rational, nice guy. I mean, it's Richard Ayoade.
That's true. Elfo, he stole clothes from somebody and wound up at this, adventurers society, where he regales them of tales of all of his wonderful doings. Because, let's face it, the man's been places at this point. He was at that secret temple in the desert with Big Joe and that volcano. He went to the secret city of the ogres. He went into heaven. He went into hell. The man has been around, but when he reveals that he is in fact an elf, he is immediately carted off and sold as a freak show novelty. I'm with you in that that's a little bit weird, but I'm okay with it because of what it got us. Elfo's relationship with what we think is a decapitated head at the freak show.
Oh yeah, I actually really enjoyed that. Elvo
loved that.
Is such such a conscience of the show, and and while he has some really funny kind of sexual lines, like there's stuff about he says something to Bean like early on in the season about like, oh well, that ruins all the fantasies I had about us, but it opens up some other new ones.
Yeah, I think she's saying like Elfo's been more of a mom to me than you, Mom. And
Right.
Oh, this ruins so many fantasies. It opens up so many more.
Right. Yeah, he, like I said, despite jokes like that, Elfo always remains like this pure like conscience of the show, and his relationship with the head is really good.
Yeah, I genuinely loved that. Their interaction. He just, he wants to have a good relationship with her. He likes her for who she is. Then, I mean, even just the reveal that she's not a head, which of course she's not. It's a Carney trick. And her leaving him, that after Bean shows up and rescues them, when she kind of, she helps him escape, and then because her predictions are usually accurate, she's a fortune-telling head. And they go through this whole alliterative exercise where all she draws are cards that start with D that are just horrible portents of doom. In fact, I think one of them is the Doom card.
Well, in Hollywood, like there are only 2 tarot cards anyone ever gets, and it's either the Lovers or Death.
That's true. Poor hanged man over there. Like, come on, man. What about me?
Yeah, I cheer every time someone gets the Death card. Like every time there's a tarot scene, I'm like, Death card, Death card, Death card, Death card. Oh yeah, Death card, called it.
I mean, that is the free space on the tarot reading bingo card.
It is the bingo card. Well, I guess Lovers is the free space, but anyway.
So, yeah, after they're rescued, after Bean, escapes from Alva, she doesn't trust him her lack of trust for him, it might be warranted objectively, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense other than, she trusts the Archdruidess just enough to not trust him. And he's a little bit pushy, I guess, but I don't know.
Yeah, he did send a bunch of robot light bulbs after them, which led to the best joke of the show, where they start turning on again after Bean shorts them all out. Elfo just going, quick, they're all getting new ideas.
That was a really good line. Yeah, I love it. They also rescue a mermaid, who is across the aisle from Elfo. Then the mermaid, Elfo, and Bean get onto a boat. They escape Dreamland, and they escape Steamland, and they start making their way towards Steamland. Which leads to one of the odder episodes, even though it kind of broke my heart. Big Splash, where they get where it's just a lot of character interaction. The boat runs ashore. Bean. It's not clear whether or not she completely hallucinates an interlude with the mermaid, where they go back to Mermaid Island, and she kind of falls in love with this mermaid, and then wakes back up on the beach, and she and Elfo go back to the real world. But again, there's a lot of, was that real, was that not real, that kind of gets played out in a very interesting way. So that setup, that series of episodes, you mentioned Elfo as kind of the conscience of the show in a lot of ways, and again, his relationship with the head, I enjoyed that. The way he handles the breakup, there's laughs in it, but there's the first bit when because he's the one who figures out how to work the boat, and he then forms a it's supposed to be a humorous attachment to the boat as a desperate rebound attempt from having his heart broken. But there's a moment early in that episode when he's just kind of pouring his heart. Bean comes into the wheelhouse, and they talk for a minute, and then he starts pouring his heart out and turns around, and she's gone. And this just kind of long, mournful, as he realizes just how utterly alone he is. Maybe it's because I'm a profoundly lonely person most of the time. Again, that hit me, man. That just hit me.
Yeah, I could see that. You were talking about Bean and the mermaid, and the mermaid takes her home, and and there's that whole homecoming scene, and I'll tell you, this middle part here, the show really slows down, but it slows down in a way that gives you some time with these characters and the relationships that they're in. And it's actually kind of nice because the show tends to kind of go at a frenetic pace with a lot of, really crazy things happening. And this one, they just sort of let the girls hang out, which I thought was really nice. And it was actually I thought was one of the best parts of the season.
Yeah, I'm completely in agreement with that. It slows down, but not, but in the way you kind of want a show to slow down on occasion. You're very rarely going, come on, move this along, let's get this over with. It is stuff that you're still engaged with.
And I thought it was very well written. Like the writers really had a grasp on Bean as a character and how she would connect with another person. Because up to this point, she's kind of gal-palled around with Lucy and Elfo, or she's been forced into, marriages with, this prince or that prince.
Who's now a pig.
Yeah, who's now a pig.
We'll get to Merkham.
Yeah, we'll get there. So it was actually nice to see her genuinely love somebody and connect with them, and and then when it's over, have her heart broken. I thought that was all really good stuff.
Well, I think with the case of the mermaid, I can't remember her name is. I think this is her first time sort of being with someone similar to her, like a girl her age who's also kind of dealing with her position in society and her life decisions and being kind of a screw up in her own eyes. Whereas Elfo is an elf, so I mean he's great, but not really quite the same life there. And Lucy is a demon, so not really the best person to go to with your problems. They tend to make them worse.
I was gonna say, yeah, Lucy is the devil on your shoulder, encouraging you to to give into whatever crapulence happens to be presenting itself. So
do it.
Yeah, and so like I said, while they're great and she's connected to them, they're not. These are not romantic relationships, and we haven't really seen Bean in. What's Bean like in a romantic relationship? We don't know until this season when she has those moments with the mermaid.
Yeah, and also the mermaid doesn't really seem to mind that Bean's a princess. So she doesn't have any baggage there. She's not worried about saying the wrong thing and getting executed by Zog or trying to play some sort of geopolitical power moves like Steamland. She's just like, hey, let's hang out. Yeah, life's tough, isn't it?
Yep, we are existing as people.
Yeah, so I think that was Bean's sort of first genuine talk with another person at that personal level, and yeah, that kind of got deep into her, and then her losing that person. I'm not sure why she disappeared all of a sudden, but yeah, kind of you can see how that would hurt Bean and give her some more stuff to deal with.
All right, Robert, what happens next?
Well, the follow-up to this is, I think we have to talk about these next two episodes kind of in conjunction, and then the last two. Mm-hmm. Because we get episodes 7 and 8, which are Bad Moon Rising and Hey Pig Spender. And I really think that, as a general rule, these are the weakest parts of the season.
Yeah, this is the bit where they go to Merkimer's...
Well, that's Pig Spender, which... Mm-hmm. As a pure standalone kind of madcap episode is fine, I guess. But Bad Moon Rising is Bean and Elfo return to Dreamland. Zog is getting more and more crazy. Una shows up because she late to attend the wedding that again happened a few episodes prior. Una and Bean get to do some really fun bonding in this episode, actually. It's one of the highlights. They also discover the plot by the secret society. We learn that the real love of Una's life was not Zog, but his older brother Yog. So they decide to try and take down this nefarious group. This all culminates in what is supposed to be kind of an orgy scene that the king walks in on, and the sight of his ex-wife and daughter naked together with all these old people finally pushes him over the edge.
Now, the idea I got was that they weren't really planning on having an orgy. The idea was to
no. This secret society, they totally had an orgy after this.
The impression I was given was that this whole thing was a setup so that Una and Bean would get naked and Zog would see them and finally go off the deep end.
Yeah, that was the main plan, but they also do the orgies as well. Like in Season 1, that was kind of the running joke of the secret society to overthrow. Zog would meet up, and then it would just be like, okay, robes off, and everyone robes off, and the rest is left to your imagination.
Thankfully.
Okay.
So, point being, this was a setup to try and get Zog all the way crazy, but they all had an orgy after the fact anyway.
I didn't spend that much time thinking about it, I'll be honest with you.
All right, so that's kind of what that is. And then that leads into Hey Pig Spender. Now, part of what's going on here is Dreamland is worried about Steamland now trying to annex them forcefully. They are technologically inferior. Dreamland doesn't have much of a standing army.
Dreamland's also had it rough the past few months, given
just a little bit. I mean, they spent a giant chunk of time all turned to stone.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, I think when we first meet Zog and Bean at the and are first introduced to Dreamland in the beginning of Season 1, the kingdom is strong and it's standing on its own and it's running as well as a kingdom run by a barbarian can be run. And then by this point, things are in shambles. They've been attacked. Their army is asunder. Just things are not running the way that they're supposed to be. And that's part of what drives everyone to push Bean to take over, is that they've run kind of rudderless for a while. They had that that intercession there with Derek as king, but again, he was supposed to be carrying out the will of Oddval and the Archdruidess. But if as just an overall thing, the kingdom has been without a strong leader getting things done and making the trains run on time for what seems like forever. Certainly almost the entire length of Season 2 and Season 3, if nothing else. And so they're trying to, so the whole push for Bean at this point is you have got to assume leadership here and get things back because, the enemy is starting to circle. And we're going to run out of time. Plus, there's the bit with the green smoke that's coming towards the kingdom, which they don't know what it is, and they assume it's bad news. And so it's like, somebody take control and deal with the imminent bad that is coming.
Figure out what a scout is.
That big ominous cloud of green smoke. So Pig Spender is them and Prince Merkimer the pig. Well, before that, there's a monster terrorizing the town. Well, sorry, one of the other things from Bad Moon Rising is Lucy and Elfo tried to... was it Elfo? Yeah, Lucy and Elfo try to train a bunch of people as soldiers. And it goes okay until they're actually confronted with a bunch of the troglodytes mooning the full moon. And this immediately maxes out their stress meters. They all go insane and break and run like the cowards they are. So here, Lucy, Elfo, Merkimer, they also find there's a monster that's been terrorizing them. It's just the man. It's Prince Merkimer, not the pig, but his mind was swapped with that of a pig. So this is the pig body in the pig brain in the Merkimer body. They come up with a scenario by which they can try and return him to his original kingdom of Bentwood. Get it? In exchange for, money and weaponry and maybe bits of an army and all the stuff they need to try and keep Dreamland from falling completely apart. This is just kind of a bit of a character examination of Merkimer, because the Merkimer human, who used to be the pig, again, the pig mind in the human body, just reveals, I have discovered sentience, because that would have happened given the brain structure of humans versus pigs. And now he wants to kind of rule Bentwood, and Pig Merkimer goes, hey, we're the same. We are in fact one, but many. How about we, queue it up and just kind of rule this place? And they kind of do that until Pig Merkimer realizes that no one actually liked him. His parents hated him, the whole 9 yards, and he just kind of comes to realize that the only people who actually cared about him were the people of Dreamland. He inadvertently, while saving Elfo and Bean and Lucy from being killed, they're to be killed by being drowned in gold coins. Which is just the most absurd thing, but so funny. He helps them escape, kills human Merkimer. They escape back. They now have all the arrows that they got that were shot after them in the carriage. And Elfo actually swallowed / inhaled enough gold for them to kind of get it all out of him and use it as solving at least their immediate financial issues. Again, these are weaker episodes as far as the whole overarching season goes. Pig Spender in particular, that's one of the few ones that I kind of went, I was checking my watch, like, come on, can we move this along, please?
Yeah, it felt like the bridge to get to the conclusion, which was fine. I just, getting there along the way, I was like, all right, whatever.
Yeah, David, you got anything for those 2 episodes in particular? Because again, there were a couple of funny gags.
Yeah, I actually did like the Merkimer episode just because it was just a standalone episode. Where it was just, here's the situation, we're going to this place, we're doing this thing, and character development happens along the way. And we even get the sort of surprise resolution at the end, where Elfo ate all the coins and they have the arrows stuck to the back of the carriage. Not nearly enough to stop an army, but okay, I get the joke. My only real complaint about that episode is it seems like a lot of the establishment for Merkimer felt kind of retconned in. Like, I never really saw him as being this pompous, arrogant, selfish character. He was just a pig that sounded like, a high society aristocrat, which again is a funny joke. But we just never saw Merkimer sort of be selfish or manipulative as a pig.
Yeah, well, I think the only thing he did in that vein was didn't he get Bean thrown off of her play in part 2?
Maybe, but yeah, there's like a line where Bean's like, "Oh, Merkimer, he's always like this." It's like, when? Like, we haven't seen enough of this character to really know this.
That's true. That's a fair point.
Yeah, but I mean, it's a small quibble, but yeah, overall, I enjoyed the episode as a standalone fantasy storyline. My only other big issue is, where did Bean get a trench coat?
Who knows?
Yeah, I know, Mr. Wizard, but
hey, look, if I could complain about her lack of medical expertise, then you're welcome to question the wardrobe.
Yeah. My biggest issue was, how did that boat sink on the beach? Like, beaches don't work like that, I'm pretty sure.
Okay.
I imagine it was the giant octopus from part 2 that took it down. So this leads us into the final 2 episodes, The Madness of King Zog, which broke my heart.
Yeah, I've been waiting for us to get to this point to where we can actually talk about that. I know, the stuff with Elfo, and the breakup with the head, bothered you too. The stuff with, you had mentioned to me offline, the stuff with Zog, being taken off to the whatever their equivalent of an insane asylum is, really messed with you. Kind of did to me too, just because Zog and Bean, for all their differences and various confrontations that they've had, you really do get a sense that Zog loves his daughter, and for all of Bean's sort of rebellion and childish attitudes and behaviors, she has grown. Weirdly enough, over this wild and crazy and wacky show, she has grown quite a bit as a character, and she realizes the weight of all the things that are happening right now. And I can't remember where else I've seen this. I'm sure I've seen it a bunch of different places, but sort of specifically the idea of having the weight of leadership thrust upon you. You're like, I am not ready for this. This is this is your deal. You're the leader. You're the king. You're the whatever. And it's like, nope. This is it. You got to step up and do it. So all of that. I mean, for a silly cartoon that this tends to be, this was really well written. This part.
Yeah, I mean, that same kind of, if you want another example of that particular dynamic, I don't know if you've seen Scrubs or not.
I have not.
But one of there's a lot of tension between.
Before you go any further, you know what I was actually thinking of? This might not have been the exact one that I had in mind initially, but as we're talking about it, the image keeps coming into my head. King Arthur from The Sword and the Stone, where he's sitting there with the robe that's way too big.
With the sword and the big crown, and he's
like, what am I supposed to do with all this? Like, well, you're the leader now, bud.
Yeah. Again, there's a similar different. But there's a lot of conflict between a couple of characters in the television show Scrubs. One of them is the chief of medicine for the hospital, Dr. Kelso, and then and Dr. Cox, and they just kind of clash all the time over just differing ideologies. One of them is trying to run the hospital, the other is trying to save patients, and the occasional intersection where they kind of clash. Towards the end of the show's run, Dr. Kelso retires, and Dr. Cox takes over his job. He is promoted to chief of medicine. And after a couple of episodes, he starts to realize and more fully appreciate, what Dr. Kelso was dealing with. And it's a really nice kind of flip of their previous relationship when they start meeting up a little again on occasion after that. And you get a little bit of that here, where most teenagers go through this in some respect, where you curse your parents, and then you get older, and whether you have your own kids or just younger siblings, or you gain more perspective, and then you observe something similar, you kind of go, "Oh wow, that was me, huh?" I was that person. But the madness of King Zog goes a little bit like this. I believe this is the one that has he heads out and he escapes from a sanitarium. And he gets a ventriloquist dummy, which he then speaks through, and because he will only speak gibberish. Through the puppet, he will speak in more riddles and insults, but he will actually use words. Bean is able to decipher these and uses them to help create a plan for this ominous green smoke that's coming. It's actually just Big Joe, who survived falling into a volcano, because of course he did.
I, for the life of me, did not remember the Big Joe character. Like they're writing him in, as if you, the audience, remember Big Joe, remember the impact he had on the show, and it's, oh my God, he's back, and I'm like, who the fuck is Big Joe?
He shows up for a couple of episodes each part in about this place in the he stole Lucy in part 1 and nearly threw him into the volcano. In part 2, he took them all to. He was in the other kingdom, the Desert Kingdom, and there was something there. Now he shows up here. This is just kind of what he does.
Mm-hmm.
So anyway, he shows up, but the big thing here is, Zog is getting worse. His mental health is still deteriorating, and the scene that kind of really kicked me in the feels is he's sitting on the throne. It's late at night. Bean goes to see him and is trying to talk through the dummy, and there's a kind of a moment of lucidity where he goes, no, look at me, Bean. Look at what poor Zog has been through. He was, tortured, and there's this. This is one of my favorite things when a sitcom, or something like The Simpsons or Future, any of them, when they take something that was played for laughs and they flip it.
Yeah.
Because he says, no, he was shot. He was told that his daughter, who he loves, was dead. That his son had done it. Then he was locked in a coffin and buried alive. Like, yeah, he's a little messed up.
And then, on top of which, as if things couldn't get any worse, he saw his ex-wife, who ran off to become a pirate, and his daughter buck-ass nude in the middle of an old man orgy.
Yeah, there's a lot going on there, and he has this genuinely great line, and I'm not I'm not a completely unstable person, but I've got, we've all got crap in our heads that we're dealing with.
Hang on, before you continue that thought, did you ever watch King of the Hill?
Yeah.
Do you remember the episode where Hank walks in on, I think it's his mother and her boyfriend, like, having sex or whatever, and he gets hysterical blindness?
Yes.
Something along those lines.
Well, Hank, the sight of my naked body made you go blind. I'm not exactly feeling good about myself right now, but he takes him to a faith healer at the end, and that's kind of what it was great.
Yeah, well, I'll tell you what, that show wasn't always the best, but I'll tell you what, it hit, though, it was really funny.
Dad, Mr. Gribble's on fire. Yeah, that'll happen.
Dang it, Bobby.
Anyway, but what killed me, I think one of the things that got me here was they're saying goodbye. And Zog has this great line, I've got to go away and try to get help, because if I don't, there is no coming back from this. And they share a tearful embrace, and then he is carted off by Chaz. A lot of Z's there. And it's just this really quiet, genuinely touching moment between, daughter and father saying goodbye. And, I mean, sure, intellectually, we all know, sure, Zog is there's going to be some more hijinks for Zog. He's going to come back. But in this moment, it still feels real. It still feels like a serious goodbye. Yeah,
I don't necessarily... I would not be unhappy if he came back and this was, this was the darkness before the sunrise that we'll get in part 4 when I think this thing is coming to an end. But I would also... I would have bought that this was that they were writing him out of the show. Like, I'm good either way. You know what I mean? I think they gave him a strong ending, but if this is just, again, the darkness if this is the darkness before the sunrise, then that's fine too. Either way, it was well written.
All right, so David, we kind of threw a lot out there. What do you got? What do you got for the madness of King Zog?
I think you've covered most of it pretty good. Yeah, with just emotional goodbye from Bean to Zog. I don't know if you covered it all, but don't you think that the owner of that dummy shop looked a lot like Dagmar?
Yep.
Yeah,
pretty sure that was Dagmar.
Yeah, like as I left it, I almost yelled out, like in the voice of Bean, "Thanks, Mom." It was that obvious, but so I'm going to focus more on Bean's character for that. Is sort of her not only having to say goodbye to her dad, but also facing the reality of responsibility, where she's now going to have to be the one running the kingdom, and sort of as her mom put it, the only thing you've ever finished in life is a beer.
True. Oh,
yeah.
We didn't touch on it, but the insults those two traded in episode 2, were genuinely great insults.
Yeah, it was kind of interesting, I guess, going all the way back to the first arc, is the idea of Dagmar kind of saying, you know what, our evil plan didn't work out, so screw it, I'm just going to try and be your mom now. That was an interesting angle to go at, especially with the whole, is she really serious or is she up to something? Because Dagmar just kind of defaults to suspiciously evil. But yeah, certainly when they're each sort of voicing what they think the other person thinks of them.
Yeah, that was good stuff.
Yeah,
that's the thing. I'm sorry, Dave. Go ahead.
Yeah, and then Dagmar had that best one where it's the only thing you've ever finished in life is a beer, and it's sort of the one-upping each other until Bean just says, I never loved you, and that kind of just makes her pause, like, whoa, like my daughter actually thinks that about me, and you would hope that might give her some pause for thought, and considering how she has kind of been a terrible mother in response to whatever the heck is actually going on.
That's the thing about the show. The show's pitch was, we're going to do Futurama, but for the fantasy genre. And, okay, that's a fun pitch. You know, like when you're the guy that did The Simpsons and Futurama, you're like, okay, now we want to send up the fantasy genre. Okay, great. And so, who are your characters, and what's the whole idea? And that's a lot of season 1 is just sort of making fun of those tropes. But the other side of it is how much of this show, once it gets past that, it's like, okay, well, we've done all that now. Now it's about these characters, and specifically, Bean started off as this spoiled debutante, sort of, riffraff, trashy character who goes through these life-changing episodes and adventures and comes out the other side as this not quite ready for leadership. Again, not quite the crown, but, still. Not quite ready for leadership, but sort of having leadership thrust upon her, and her taking on that mantle as best she can. And I'm like, wow, that's actually like well-written growth for a silly cartoon character. And I'll tell you, it's to the show's credit that they were like, well, we have this canvas to paint on, and we don't want to just keep doing the same joke over and over and over again. Let's actually make this about something. And it's about growth and maturity and all these other things that you would not, I think about like The Simpsons, and The Simpsons started off as a parody of the American family sitcom, and then it became kind of this like quasi-political satire. Same thing with South Park, where South Park starts off as this juvenile, lowbrow humor and became probably the best political satire on television.
Yeah, once they ran out of ways to kill Kenny, it's like, oh, geez, we're actually going to have to be about something.
Right, and that's what the show became. The show actually stopped focusing on Stan and Kyle and became about Cartman, because Cartman became your analog for the worst elements of society that they were lampooning. And now, like, that's even shifted to Randy. But, that's kind of what Disenchantment's become. It's become this, this story about this character and what she's going through, and not just how many ways can we make fun of Lord of the Rings and and these and Game of Thrones and shit like that. Which that stuff's still there, but I would say the strength of this season was those relationships and those maturations that we've been talking about.
Yeah, and we get some interesting both setup and payoff for that in our final episode here. We get Zog being transported to the asylum, and he's with Chaz, who's just kind of creepy. But we get Bean, as Queen, and then the ogres attack. And the ogre, and they're able to kind of fight off the ogres for a period of time, but eventually the ogres start wearing them down. And the ogres want Elfo. That is pretty much all they want. And there's a giant contingent of the kingdom and the advisory board and whatnot. They're like, they'll leave the rest of us alone. Elf be gone.
Okay, was anyone else getting like that the writers were purposely trying to do allusions to World War I? And World War II.
Yeah. Okay. Sure.
What? You're not with me on that?
I didn't see it, and I didn't think about it at the time, but I can buy that.
Like they were. I mean, they so much said like, if we pacify the ogres, they'll leave us alone. And the whole time I'm thinking they have got to be making fun of the thinking going with Hitler and let them have half of France and whatnot. It's fine. This won't end in the Second World War or anything.
Yeah. Okay. Again, I can see that. I can see that. That wasn't necessarily my take on it, but I don't think that's wrong.
Okay,
I got the appeasement analog, but
okay, I'm starting to think like, fuck, I'm the only one here. Shit, how'd that happen? How did the smart guy miss the historical analog?
Again, I suppose it's more because I did actually take the ogres at their word.
Okay.
Well, again, I'm also thinking about this from a macro perspective. Look, this shouldn't be too much of a shock for anybody, but Elfo's mom is going to be that ogre that they ran into in part 2.
Yeah, I was also thinking it's going to be a setup where, next season Elfo gets to the ogre camp. It's like, oh, they actually didn't want Elfo so they could kill him. They wanted to welcome him into their society or introduce him to his mom or something non-sinister.
Yeah, like his mother, the ogre that helped them escape in part 2. When she heard that his name was Elfo, she reacted to that. And his Elfo's not father, but his grandfather, the one that raised him, mentioned, you're only half elf. And I'm 90% sure that's where that's going. So that's where my head is, rather than the appeasement gags, which again is just where my head was when I was watching this. Not to say that that's not what they were alluding to at all.
Okay.
But anyway, she won't turn over Elfo, so the army abandons her. They escape into the tallest tower, but there's no help and there's no hope. Elfo then sacrifices himself, throws himself out to the ogres, who don't kill him, they just cart him off. Dagmar shows up in the elevator, in the magic elevator that's in the castle. They've established the elevator beforehand, but she shows up, carts Bean downward. Lucy gets his head stuck in the elevator door and decapitated. He dies and goes to heaven. And somewhere in the
hell no.
And somewhere in the bowels of the underworld, Dagmar takes Bean to meet the person she's supposed to marry, whose silhouette is suspiciously akin to that of Alva's.
Who was another character I do not remember.
He's the guy... What, Alva?
Yeah.
The guy in charge of Steamland.
Oh, shit. That's right. Okay. I'm telling you, somewhere in this, I just got lost and, my attention drifted. Okay. My bad. Sorry.
No, you're fine. Look, you caught the historical allusion to World War II. I'm not... There's a finite amount of yelling at you I get to do about a somewhat short visual allusion to another character.
I will tell you this. I think I'm going to say first, I like this season. I think I like the season. I've liked the show as it's progressed. I don't know if I have a favorite season yet. I'd kind of have to go back and look at it. But I definitely have continued to enjoy the show as it's progressed. But I will tell you, by the end of this one, I was also like, get the fuck on with this already. I'm that, we were talking about WandaVision and how you and I are not watching it right now. We are waiting for it to be over. Just both of us, it's kind of our preferred method of digesting television. There's the occasional show like Snowfall or something, or currently The Connors, which I will watch week to week, because I'm not going to talk about them, and I might as well, watch something contemporaneously. But my preferred method of watching TV is to do like I did with this one, which is binge it, which is, what made Netflix so popular, was the bingeable show. My problem is that there are times where I'm binging something, and by the end of it, I can't wait for it to be over, even if I'm, enjoying it. I don't actively hate anything about the show, but I'm also kind of getting exhausted, and I just want it to be over, and I think that's where I ended up with this one.
I think that's fair, and I think part of that is, and this might just be me, I have a bit of an expectation with this show the way it is structured. If you look at The Simpsons, there's very clearly no overarching structure, right? There's no overarching story. It is what it is, and when it's good, it's great. I love The Simpsons.
They can barely keep continuity, let alone have an overarching structure.
Yeah,
the number of times Homer and Marge have met in each decade.
The number of times they've met, the number of times they've told different versions of how the kids grew up when they were babies. Are you kidding me? The amount of times they've talked about Homer getting, there was a bit where they I think before Maggie was born, where he was working in a bowling alley.
Yeah. That is one of the best episodes of television.
Yes. Also, but not exactly in continuity, though. Again, they sort of rewrite The Simpsons' origins as the mood fits them.
Yeah, and again, the same is kind of true with Futurama. There's some overarching players, but there's not an overarching story being told by Futurama. Here it feels different. The way they've kind of structured in particular things, in particular narrative beats and whatnot, it does, in fact, feel like there is a specific point and a specific end goal to be reached.
Yeah.
And if you think that exists, then time spent not actively moving things in that direction feels wasted.
Also, I think like when I think about the first season, where you were just getting to know Lucy, Elfo, and Bean, and so much of season 1 is just them off on goofy adventures, where I enjoyed it, but to your point about like the show didn't feel like it was going anywhere until the very end, and then the whole of season 2 is this journey going somewhere. Like first, they have to wrap up her and Dagmar, then there's the Steamland stuff. And then, and then the conclusion with Oddball and all, and people turning to stone and all of that. I can't remember when they turned to stone, but it doesn't matter. The point is, like, I feel like with season 3, just kind of take us back to the beginning of this conversation. They weren't always in the service of moving the overall plot forward. Sometimes we were just hanging around. And while those were some of the best episodes, I think also I probably would have done better taking a break and kind of chunking this into two pieces, and maybe a little bit more of it would have stuck with me.
That's fair. So anyway, Dave, your thoughts? What do you got?
Yeah, I also kind of found that it couldn't quite decide if it wanted to be a large overarching story or just a series of smaller episodes. And I think sort of both suffered for that. But yeah, also like Mark, I'm kind of ready for it's time to move this thing along. Let's get the dish about what's going on with Bean and the prophecy, and what Dagmar's master plan is. Like I think they've dragged that out long enough. It's time, it's time to get to the basement and find out what's really going on.
Yeah, get the kids to the mall already. I would like them to finally resolve what's going on with Levo and the Elf King, because while that's hilarious that they talk in sort of secret riddles, like, did you find the thing? The very thing. Okay, like, you've done that now 100 times. Turn the page.
I have kind of a thought about that.
Okay.
If we don't mind a little bit of theory crafting.
No, what else is this podcast for but mindless speculation? And while we're at it, let's talk about the Marvel movies again. No, please continue.
I think it has to do with those amphorae they found, because a drop of that stuff turned that little normal-sized baby octopus into a giant octopus in part 2. I think that, combined with this being the elves' ancient seat of power, I think the elves are meant to be more human-sized, if not larger, and they're going to be coming to reclaim their ancestral homeland very soon.
Yeah, you kind of beat me to it. Well, I didn't know where you were headed with that, but without even remembering that particular detail, when they found the elven ancient seat of power, I'm like, oh, this is going to end with the elves at war with the humans. That's where this is headed.
Which I'd be perfectly okay with. That's a fine thing to, invest time and money into. If you're this, like, go for it. Give me the send up of the Battle of Five Armies with Steamland and the ogres and the pirates show up and the zombie. Like, sure, throw it all at the wall here.
Give me the Battle of the Five Armies.
I am down for that 100%.
I am here for the comical Battle of the Five Armies. It'll be fantastic.
You're darn right, and it'll be more satisfying than the last season of Game of Thrones.
Oh, shut up.
I'm not wrong, and you know it.
You didn't watch Game of Thrones. What do you know?
I don't have to have watched it to know how unsatisfied people were with that.
Yes, we all saw the Midnight's Edge endless video, more endless videos about the Game of Thrones and how shitty it was than their constant bitching about Kathleen Kennedy. We get it, Midnight's Edge. Jesus Christ. Anyway.
Look, I think people overreacted to the wrong parts of that being, again, anyone whose big takeaway from that was, but Danny was a hero. You did not know what you were watching through that entire show if you thought they were heroes, buddy.
Anyway, I'm with you, though, in a very general way, because I think that for them to have taken this long to establish this really close relationship between Elfo and Bean, I mean, Bean will go to the end of the earth for Elfo.
She went into hell.
Yeah, she went into hell to get him back. So to the end game, no pun intended, of sorts being this is all leading to them having to stand on opposites, them who love each other having to stand on opposite sides of the wall in conflict, I think is a good ending to this fantasy send-up and in line with the tropes of fantasy stories.
Yeah, I'll buy that.
But Dave, you were talking.
I think you've covered most of what could potentially happen. Yeah, it's pretty obvious that the Dreamland's built on the ancient elf kingdom. I assume there was a big war in the past there. But yeah, probably the thing I'm looking forward to the most is just Lucy in heaven. That's going to be priceless.
That's going to be so great.
I'm anxiously awaiting Lucy being cast down from heaven. being cast out of heaven. It's like, oh, I'm a demon reborn because I'm actually a fallen angel now. That'll be fantastic.
Well, no, then he shows up in hell and all the people he screwed over to get Bean and Elfo out of hell are like, oh, revenge.
Yeah. All right, give your final thoughts, you guys. Dave, any other thoughts on the season? Your final thoughts? Last licks before we get on out of here.
Yeah, again, I thought kind of suffered a bit from not knowing exactly what it wanted to do, though it did set up some good stuff in the end. Certainly being, having to deal with taking on the responsibility of being queen and letting her father go so that he could get better was good stuff. The stuff with Una and Bean tripping out, working through their problems was hilarious. Derek, he's there, we guess. Like, even Una forgot about him mostly when she came to visit.
Oh, the stuff about, like, take me with you, and she's like, no. Just no.
He shows up anyway. Oh, that poor kid.
Yeah, we'll see where it goes, but yeah, I'm just really hoping that they move things forward with the overall story.
All right, Robert, take me home.
No. I will not, sir. I know the neighborhood in which you live. I got some laughs out of this season, and I'm with you in the sense that it's there was a bit of a running gag here that we didn't touch on, but I think deserves at least a bit of a mention. They have a character who will just poke his head out of a window anytime somebody potentially might bring up narrative inconsistencies and just start complaining about them before he is shot off screen by a flaming arrow.
that guy. I had a couple of good laughs at that.
As did I. At the same time, there does come a point in particular when you're just making an excuse for your own bad writing and trying to cover it up. And I think we're kind of towing that line here. I enjoy the majority of it, but if your reaction to people caring enough about what you're doing to point out, hey, what about such and such, is to go, oh, you care about such and such, do you? You're kind of missing the point.
I'm wondering how much of that was third and fourth draft. They wrote these drafts out, and then somebody noticed inconsistencies, and they were like, okay, we could fix it, or we could make fun of Game of Thrones fans. What do you think we should do? Well, it is a comedy.
That's fair. That's a very fair observation. So, do I enjoy the show still? Yeah, I do. I get some good laughs. There's some genuinely heartfelt stuff, which is, I maintain for both The Simpsons and Futurama, the best parts about them are their ability to flip from comedy to more serious drama, and make you care about the characters that they've created. I've said this many times. If you've spent enough time with characters in a comedy, and you can't or won't use that for something other than cheap laughs, you have failed either conceptually or in terms of talent. So I profoundly appreciate that this show is willing to show off other stuff other than, stupid laughs. And it's not like you can't have both. You certainly can. The episodes of Futurama that everyone cite as genuine tearjerkers have funny stuff in them too.
So I know you're not a fan, and it's a different artistic team, but Family Guy runs the gamut of The Bird is the Word, and genuinely sometimes tear-jerking, sometimes horrifying. I mean, there are episodes of Family Guy that my wife and I refuse to watch now for a variety of reasons. There's an episode, just one in particular, just to give you an example of what I'm talking about. There's an episode of Family Guy that's another one where it's all done in one take. And
is that the one where Brian and Stewie get locked in a vault?
That's another one I don't mind it as much, but my wife hates that episode. Yeah, it's a single act, basically, play in a room, and the thrust of that particular episode is Brian's contemplating killing himself, and a large part of it is Stewie tricking Brian into eating his poop from his diaper. That's not the one I was first going to reference.
I wanted to like that episode more than.
Well, I think my larger point is how daring Family Guy can be, because, like I said, sometimes they do The Bird is the Word and the Roadhouse stuff where people just where Peter's going through the entire episode kicking things, which, I'm waiting for someone to buy me the Peter Griffin Roadhouse t-shirt. Someone buy me that t-shirt. What do I have to be, a big boob girl on OnlyFans to get people to buy me stuff? What the hell, man?
You can pay your employees. Just a thought.
But then you're going to use that money to buy shirts? That's a waste of money. I'm not going to let you do that. The episode.
So the circle goes around and around.
Like how I did that, right? Anyway, the episode in question that I'm talking about actually is the one where Stewie goes to see a therapist. He's hurt a kid on the playground or something like that is the off-screen setup. And it's done through mostly monologues. And at the end of it, Stewie the therapist makes an observation about Stewie that cuts a little too deep, and so Stewie starts doing the Kaiser Soze thing of looking around the room and is able to pull all these details of this therapist's life together, and it's just this long drawn out thing about how he's dating this younger guy and he has all these what's the word I'm looking for? He has all these doubts about himself and all this other stuff, and it goes on and on and on. And it's a hard episode to watch, is my point. You're just sort of talking about how these shows, their premises these are supposed to be comedies, but like you're saying, there's the occasional episode where they're able to turn things on their head and use the platform to elevate the material in question and really give you some good television. I've seen it done with Family Guy. You mentioned The Simpsons. You mentioned Futurama. There's a bunch out there.
There's 2 episodes of Futurama in particular that are notorious for messing people up.
Okay. I don't think I was as big a Futurama fan, so I don't necessarily know what you're talking about.
Well, everyone knows Jurassic Park. Come on.
I honestly... I need to go back and watch some of these. I've seen episodes of Futurama. I know the premise, and there's some stuff that I think is funny, but I don't think I've watched a lot of it.
Oh, you definitely need to. Look, the 2 that...
If one of you suggests that we do a TV party in the entire series of Futurama, I'm going to throw myself into the fucking street. Go on.
Tell you what, when you have... hang on. When you have finished it, assuming you do, we can revisit we can at least keep it on somewhat permanent standby for fill-in for when other stuff falls apart.
Inevitably falls apart, sure. Yeah, we'll put that in the maybe pile. If I ever have enough of a block of time where I can wipe out all seasons of Futurama, sure, we can come back to this.
Yeah, there's also the episode, again, Jurassic Park gets everybody. The one that got me more than Jurassic Park, actually, was Luck of the Fryish. And then there's a couple scattered throughout the rest of the show that deliberately kind of tug at the heartstrings.
Mm-hmm.
There's stuff with Leela's parents, there's stuff with Fry's parents. Again, it's all kind of scattered throughout that. And even the good, and we've only talked about animated stuff here, but the good traditional sitcoms as well, the live-action ones, you have the same thing. You have those episodes that deal with stuff that is not only more serious, but you're trying to leverage the relationship that the audience has built with these characters for something other than a ha-ha.
Yeah, Bailey and I were joking about that, but I actually brought up a couple of them. We were talking. I said when we reviewed Beach Break, I was like, "Oh, it's a very special episode of Dynamite," and he was like, "I said a special episode of Dynamite," and he goes, "Oh, a very special episode." And of course, the first thing we both did is went right to Different Strokes with the molesting neighbor and all of that. I can't remember what's the other one we were goofing on. There's that episode of Different Strokes, but then there was another one that's like a classic 80s sitcom that was like, oh, it's a very special episode. Like the Roseanne back in the day did a bunch of those. Family Ties. My God, do you remember the Family Ties episode? I might be dating myself here. You're both like 10 years younger than me. But do you guys recall the Family Ties episode where Michael J. Fox, I want to say, fuck, I wish Pat were here. The entire episode is his reaction, and I think like survivor's guilt after a funeral. Do you recall this at all?
Vaguely.
Okay.
Yeah, I mean, that's another one by way of example. You mentioned Roseanne. I mean, the fight that Roseanne and John Goodman have that is, I mean, depending on how in canon you want to go, the one that leads to his heart attack.
Yeah.
That's just, that's pretty gut-wrenching. There's a couple of good episodes of Frasier that do. There's one where, Niles has a heart attack, has that very serious heart condition, and they're not sure if he's going to survive.
Dave, you want to jump in here with any, we're just kind of, we're closing up shop here, but we're sort of tangentially into special episodes of television that kind of remind us of the potential and some of what they've already accomplished with Disenchantment. Anything come to mind?
Not off the top of my head, no.
No special episodes of Star Trek you want to talk about?
Not on this podcast. We have other podcasts for that.
Okay. I gotta go back now and watch that episode of Family Ties. I remember that was a big deal one.
Well, I mean, one of the other obvious ones would be the rules for dating my teenage daughter after John Ritter died.
Yeah, that's an obvious one. In all the years of Cheers, I don't remember there being a real serious one.
I imagine there was some that were more serious than others, but yeah, again, it's just, the good ones will find those moments to properly leverage that relationship you have. I mean, to this day, one of the most, not heartbreaking in the sense that, completely debilitating, but if Homer's sitting on just the hood of that car, staring up at the starry sky after his mom has had to leave again, if that doesn't, evoke some kind of emotional response in you, I'm not sure that you're human.
So I have up here, just because I was curious, the 15 weirdest very special episodes of TV shows. I'm going to read this off real quick.
By all means.
Jesse's song, Saved by the Bell. This is, of course, the one that everyone quotes. This is the one episode everybody knows from Saved by the Bell. You know what I'm talking about, right?
I didn't watch Saved by the Bell, so I assume some kind of either abuse or suicide.
She abuses caffeine pills. She starts singing, "I'm so excited." Okay, if you don't know it, you don't know it. Dave, do you have any clue what I'm talking about?
A bit, yeah. I don't
Okay.
think I've seen that episode, but I know of it.
Boy Meets World cult fiction. I barely remember. I remember Vader was in Boy Meets World. That's about all I remember about this show. Again, wish Pat were here. I did not watch Buffy I have never seen a single episode of Buffy the Vampire Slayer, but apparently Beer Bad is the one that they're quoting here.
That's an odd choice. But okay.
Okay, here's one from before, from when I was a little kid. I might not have even been born yet. What's happening? Doobie or not Doobie? Keep moving on because I'm sure nobody's seen it. The aforementioned Bicycle Man episode from Different Strokes. Good Times, JJ in Trouble. It's right up there with What's Happening. Black Rhino from MacGyver. MacGyver? No clue.
I might be misremembering, but I seem to recall having like that. I'm pretty sure that's legit.
Okay. Accidents Happen from Punky Brewster.
Isn't that the episode where like the guy gets into an accident, they think he's okay, and then at the end he dies? Or am I thinking of some other show?
Something about the Challenger.
Okay.
Quincy M.E. Next Stop Nowhere. Moving on. The Facts of Life. The First Time. I'm sure I've seen this one. I don't remember it, though. Because I was a big fan of The Facts of Life growing up. Family Ties Say Uncle. Blossoms. Oy. Okay, here's one you guys might remember, being significantly younger than me. Dinosaurs, Steroids to Heaven.
Vaguely, actually. Yeah, I mean, I'm kind of glad there's talks of a reboot of Dinosaur. I thought it was I enjoyed the heck out of that show. I really just did.
Have you been watching it on Disney Plus?
No, not yet, but I need to go back through it because, again, I have fond memories. Mm-hmm. I remember watching the finale live. I mean, I was a little kid, but I remember it.
Yeah, that when they announced that and the Muppet Show, I half expected somebody to hit me up with whenever we're doing a TV party for these. I am surprised it hasn't happened yet.
Well, considering your current stance on don't ever pitch me anything right now for the next 3.5 months, I have a schedule and it will fall apart on its own, so help me God.
I guess I do sound like that, don't I? Star Trek, here's one for you, Dave. You ready?
Yeah.
Star Trek Enterprise, Stigma.
The one Star Trek show I haven't watched all of.
I've not seen enough of Enterprise to remember that one in particular.
All right, and then number one here on the list, Family Matters, Life of the Party.
Yeah, that's I believe that's another one of those like drunk driving awareness ones where a beloved character is killed off.
Something like that. All right. Anything else, guys, before we get into plugs? Robert?
I've seen a few people that are kind of down on this show.
Really? Why?
I think the line I heard was, well, if you squint really hard, it's kind of like an unfunny Futurama.
Okay, so these are people just wanting it to be Futurama.
Well, I don't know if it's that or, again, just kind of expectations of again, I've been enjoying it, but I do kind of see the point that I can see where people would not enjoy it, is maybe the best way to phrase that. But I'm with you guys in the sense that I want to see where it goes and how it ends. I also do kind of hope that happens sooner rather than later.
Mm-hmm. Well, I think when they brought this to Netflix, they said it is 2 seasons, 20 episodes apiece of 30 minutes. And they said, great, chunk it into 10 episodes, and you've got yourself a deal. So I want to say, like, this is it. They're not doing more than 4 of these. And so
if they do more, I can't see it being more than 6.
Mm-hmm. But I think the initial plotted out story was for, 40 episodes total, and then that's it. Story's over.
I would rather that be. I would rather any story go out when it's supposed to go out, even if it's one I like, than drag on. Even if it's a show I really like, I'd rather it end when it's supposed to end, rather than drag on to an interminable degree.
Well, that was my argument with Ronnie in Community. Was it went on well longer than it should have, and
much like The Big Bang Theory should have ended after about 5 minutes.
Shut up. Structurally, Community was, should have ended when What's-His-Face left college, and then it just kept going on because, people were watching it, people enjoyed it, and it's like, but you've run out of story. This has turned into trash. So I'm with you, where I hope that at the end of part 4, we're like, that's it, we're done, we're leaving out on a high note. All right. With that said, let's go ahead and... Dave, how's that podcast coming along?
I'm editing it as fast as I can. I got a new job this year, so free time is becoming a lot shorter to edit podcasts in, but I'm hoping, fingers crossed, I'll have it out by the end of the month, or at least close to that.
You work 23 hours a day? What's wrong? What's going on over there? What are you someone's slave? What happened?
No, it's just, job, life, family, all that stuff.
What's the matter? You don't want to be like me and do 5 podcasts a week? Twice a day?
I'm not saying anything. No comment.
All right. We talked before the show. Dave will be back. I said, hey, Dave, I got CBS All Access. We can do Star Trek stuff. He went, great, lower decks. And I went, I'm going to walk into traffic. But yes, because I am a man of the people. I try to be
nice to my friends.
No. If he'd said, sure, we can do Discovery, after about 3 episodes, you'd have gone, I'm going to walk into traffic.
But I am a man of the people, and I am nothing if not accommodating. I say yes to life, and yes to all my friends that are volunteering their time to come and chat with me about this and that. So yes, we will do on a podcast in the near future. We will be doing Star Trek Lower Decks. And I'm sure Dave will pop up on our Damn You Hollywood hither and thither when he has his druthers and the muse strikes him. In the meantime, speaking of druthers, we did Black Panther: The Client yesterday on source material. I did that with Christine and the great Evan Bevins. Tomorrow, depending on my mood, I got medical stuff happening tomorrow, so we'll see how this goes. Huh?
You and me both.
Oh, okay.
I finally get my root canal tomorrow.
Oh, look at you. I'm having a CAT scan. I may or may not have cancer. We'll see what happens. This is all very exciting.
Well, tell you what, I'm hoping that that your cancer has not come back.
Well, thank you, sir. Me too.
As do I.
So, either way, we will be reviewing the new Corpla Cloney album on the Metal Hammer of Doom. And then Robert absolutely insisted we continue to do as many Damn You Hollywoods as time permits and going to the streaming movies to do so. Except if Michael B. Jordan's in one of them, and it's a Tom Clancy adaptation, then suddenly he don't give a shit. But, Netflix movies, absolutely.
My concern, as publicly stated, was that you and I both know this, shows have their own momentum, their own inertia. Any show that doesn't get done after a long enough period of time simply stops existing.
We had Tom and Jerry coming up.
Yeah, and then what? 2.5 months later, you had something like... Look, this is... And to be abundantly clear, this is not a shot at you. This is just what the movie industry is doing at the moment. And my response to this was, I have a podcast I like doing and people I like talking to, and if I only talk about the movies when they get released by the big studios on the ever-changing mercurial whims of said studios at the moment, it's going to go away in about 3 months. I'd rather that not happen.
Right. So we're doing Space Sweepers. Yay! Korean space fantasy. Oh boy! Subtitles.
Hey, I am genuinely excited.
Yeah, good. So we'll be doing Damn You Hollywood this Thursday for Space Sweepers on Netflix. Sean Comer, in theory, will be joining us.
Now, is that in theory he'll be here, or the theory of Sean will be joining us?
Either way, whatever you like. Speaking of Damn You Hollywood, we also reviewed Outside the Wire. Cole Marentet and I reviewed All Hail Megatron. The Kapodsman and I reviewed the Royal Rumble. The aforementioned Beach Break. And
I mentioned you guys were way too hard on Kevin Owens and Roman Reigns.
No, you did not mention that to us, but okay.
No, I need to now. Like,
oh, okay. So, well, sure.
You guys were way too hard on that match, and I'm a harsh critic, but jeez,
I don't remember being that hard on that match.
Oh,
I remember making fun of Paul Heyman, but you know,
yeah, okay, sure. Like that, the finish was botched, but you guys are like, no, Kevin Owens, hate the guy. Look at him, he's fat. He's doing a bad Stone Cold Steve Austin impression.
Okay, that was Bailey. That wasn't me.
You went along with it. I mean, that being said, I think they have drug out. They should have ended that feud at the Royal Rumble. Sadly, it looks like that feud must continue as Kevin Owens came out and stunned Roman Reigns during his confrontation with Edge on Friday. And look, those two men busted their asses to try and make you care about that feud. They both succeeded. They both done solid work, but the booking's not doing them any favors at the moment.
I think my only comment about that is it should have ended with the golf cart and Roman Reigns just riding off into the sunset.
Which I could have lived with. I think if the finish had gone off without Heyman botching unlocking handcuffs, we would have been okay.
Yeah, that too. All right, so that is... Oh, we also reviewed the new Weezer album, OK Human. Sean Comer was on that as well. And that's it. That's all I got. All right, do your plugs and let's get out of here.
Sorry. Weezer.
Shut up.
Oh, jeez.
You gonna live?
Weezer.
Stop it.
No, I'm legitimately coughing.
I know, but stop saying Weezer. It's not Weezer's fault. You're hacking up a smoker's lung.
It kind of is, because you mentioned Weezer's. I was drinking, and just Weezer's existence is comical to me. Anyway.
You exhaust me.
Do I?
Yes.
Yeah, you can. Mark touched on a few of these at the opening, but you can find me over at 411 Mania. Saturdays I cover MMA events for them. This coming Saturday, UFC 258, which is a really solid main event on paper for the pay-per-view. Not a great supporting card. In fact, they lost one of the fights I was looking forward to today. They lost Jimmy Rivera and Pedro Munoz, which I thought was the second best fight on that whole card. That's off, so you can read my full report for UFC on ESPN Plus 42, UFC on Vegas 18. That was on Saturday, featuring Drago beating up the Demolition Man because Rocky IV greater than because Dolph Lundgren greater than Wesley Snipes. I guess that's not a hard sell. And Corey Sandhagen killing Frankie Edgar dead with one shot. Good grief. You can find my full report for that event, again, in the MMA Zone. If you're interested in professional wrestling, Fridays I cover WWE SmackDown in the Wrestling Zone of 411 Mania. Next Tuesday, we'll be back here for Damn You Hollywood, as Mark previously mentioned, so I do hope you'll all come by for that as well. Other than that, yeah, I continue to exist in essentially the same capacity I have for the last several years. That whether you consider that to be comforting, disconcerting, or tragic, I leave up to your individual interpretation.
Terrific. All right, folks, thanks for joining us on TV Party tonight. For David Wright and Robert Winfree, I'm Mark Radulich. Be well, be safe, and behave.